You know that feeling of being completely and utterly wiped out? Not just tired, but truly exhausted? Well, what if that feeling wasn't just in your head? What if chronic stress left a literal physical fingerprint in your blood? It sounds like science fiction, but a really fascinating study went looking for exactly that.
So let's really think about this. What if you could go to the doctor, give a simple blood sample, and they could see the physical evidence of long-term, debilitating stress? This isn't just a thought experiment. It's the very real problem a group of Swedish researchers set out to solve.
Okay, but before we can go looking for a fingerprint, we need to know exactly what we're looking for. The condition at the very heart of this study isn't just feeling tired after a long week. No, this is a specific medical diagnosis. In Sweden, they call it exhaustion disorder, or ED for short. And the crucial part here, the thing you have to remember, is the timeline. This is a condition that builds up over at least 6 months of intense stress. It's a marathon of being worn down, not a sprint, and it leads to this profound state of exhaustion.
And the symptoms? They are absolutely debilitating. We're talking about a complete lack of mental endurance, where even simple tasks feel like climbing a mountain. Your memory and concentration just give up. Sleep doesn't help you recover, and you get actual physical symptoms, like constant aches and pains. This is so much more than just feeling burned out.
So here's the real problem for doctors and scientists. Right now, diagnosing a condition like this depends on interviews, on checklists of symptoms, all of which can be pretty subjective, right? The Holy Grail has always been an objective biological test, a way to actually measure the impact of chronic stress, not just talk about it.
And that brings us to the next chapter in our story, the scientific detective work. Because if this condition has a real physical side to it, there have to be clues left behind somewhere in the body. These clues are called biomarkers. Think of them like forensic evidence at a crime scene. They're these measurable little signals in your body, in this case, in the blood, that can point to a particular disease or condition.
So this brings us to our three main suspects. Based on some previous research linking certain proteins to things like stress and inflammation, the scientists narrowed their focus to these three guys: VEGF, EGF, and MCP1. The big question was, could one of them be the smoking gun? Now, to figure this out, you can't just run a quick test and call it a day. No way. To prove there's a real link, they needed a rigorous, long-term experiment to gather some rock-solid evidence.
So here's the setup. They recruited two groups of women. First, you've got 105 women who are all formally diagnosed with exhaustion disorder. Then you have a control group of 116 healthy women. The idea was to compare the two and see if any key differences popped out.
And this is so important. They didn't just test them once. They took blood samples from everyone right at the start at what they call T0. But then they followed the patient group for 2 full years, taking more samples at the 12-month and 24-month marks to see how things changed over time.
All right, this is the moment of truth. After 2 years of meticulous work of collecting all this data, it was finally time to analyze the blood samples and see what the clues actually revealed.
And the very first result was a bombshell. The levels of VEGF, wow. They were dramatically, significantly higher in the patients compared to the healthy controls. This wasn't a small difference. It was a really strong first clue.
So next, they checked the second suspect, EGF. And guess what? They found the exact same pattern. Again, highly elevated levels in the women with exhaustion disorder. Okay, the case was definitely getting stronger. But you know, science is rarely that simple. When they analyzed that third suspect, MCP1, the trail went cold. Nothing. No significant difference between the two groups. And that's actually a really important finding, because it shows the effect was specific to certain proteins, not just a sign of some general inflammation.
So here's the verdict. The investigation clearly pointed to two prime suspects that were strongly linked to exhaustion disorder. That's VEGF and EGF, while completely ruling out MCP1. This was a major breakthrough.
But what happened over time? Remember those follow-up tests? Well, this is where it gets even more compelling. As the researchers tracked the patients over those 2 years, the super high levels of both VEGF and EGF actually started to steadily decrease. This suggests the biomarkers might not just signal the presence of the disorder, but could maybe even track recovery. How cool is that?
So we have a confirmed link, and we have a potential sign of recovery. What in the world does this all mean for the future of diagnosing and treating burnout? Well, the case is far from closed, but the implications are absolutely huge.
I think the biggest takeaway is this. This research provides a powerful foundation for what could be the world's first objective blood test for a condition like this. It could help move the diagnosis from the world of the subjective, how you feel, into the world of measurable biology.
Now, of course, there's still more work to do. These findings need to be tested in much larger, more diverse groups of people, including men, since this study only looked at women. Scientists also need to figure out if higher biomarker levels actually mean more severe symptoms. And then, they have to create a standardized test that any lab can actually use.
As the researchers themselves put it right in the paper, this work adds important knowledge to the pathophysiology of ED. In plain English, that just means it helps us understand the fundamental biology of what's actually happening inside the body during that kind of chronic, unrelenting stress.
And that leaves us with this one final powerful question. If we can reliably measure the physical toll of burnout, could we one day step in much, much earlier? Could a simple blood test become a vital tool to help us identify and fight burnout before it completely takes over a person's life? This research suggests the answer might just be yes.